Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a little slice of ancient Japan, and let me tell you, it's not your typical lights off, blanket on kind of bedtime. We're talking about a time when sleep was as much a spiritual practice as it was a physical necessity. You might think your pre-sleep routine is a little quirky, but ancient Japanese sleep customs, they probably make you laugh out loud, or at least raise an eyebrow or two. From bizarre rituals to deeply spiritual practices, the way they prepared for sleep was anything but ordinary. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm not here to twist your arm, just a friendly reminder. And hey, drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Let's see how far this journey goes. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Okay, let's set the scene. It's a quiet evening in ancient Japan, and the sun has just dipped below the horizon. The air is cooling down, and the time has come for the people to prepare for rest. But this is no simple brush your teeth, hop into bed situation. Oh no. Ancient Japanese sleep rituals were full of little oddities, and it's safe to say, if you were there, you might have thought, well, I might not make it through this night without a giggle. First off, let's talk about the bedding. In ancient Japan, people slept on futons, those thin mattresses that are rolled up and stored away during the day. But here's the kicker. Before they even laid down to sleep, they had to go through an elaborate ritual of bed preparation. You see, the idea was that your futon needed to be purified before use. The bed wasn't just about comfort. It was about creating a safe space, one that was free from bad energy. Imagine someone cleaning your bed before you even sit on it. Sounds like a dream, right? Now, why was this necessary? Well, ancient Japanese culture was deeply spiritual, and they believed that everything, including your sleeping space, was inhabited by kami, spirits, or deities that could either bring good fortune or bad vibes. It was said that the wrong energy could disrupt your sleep. So cleaning the futon wasn't just about tidying up, it was about peppering for a restful, spiritually balanced sleep. If this sounds like a lot of work just to go to sleep, well, it was. But sleep was a serious business back then. Next up, we have the incense. Yeah, we're talking about those little sticks of magic that we still burn today to set the mood. But in ancient Japan, incense wasn't just for calming the mind. It was also believed to help ward off evil spirits. So, before heading to bed, it wasn't unusual for someone to light a stick of incense, place it near the sleeping area, and then bow in respect to the kami. Think of it as a little smoke signal to the spirits. Hey, I'm about to sleep. Can you kindly keep the nightmares away? And speaking of nightmares, if you thought you had bad dreams, just wait. Ancient Japanese people had a whole separate ritual for them. They believed that bad dreams were the work of malevolent spirits, and they were especially wary of something called yurei, the restless souls of the dead. If you had a particularly disturbing dream, you might find yourself placing a small charm under your pillow to protect you from the yurei and to prevent those evil spirits from wreaking havoc on your sleep. Imagine drifting off, knowing you had a tiny, sacred talisman keeping the bad vibes at bay. Oh, but don't think it stops there. People also used special herbal sachets to help them sleep. Now, when I say herbal, I'm not just talking about lavender or chamomile. Nope. Ancient Japan had a whole arsenal of plants and herbs that were believed to have sleep-inducing properties. For example, dried lavender, sakura, cherry blossoms, and even sujinomori, a type of pine tree, were used in sachets placed under the pillow. These weren't just for the scent. Each plant had a specific purpose, like calming the mind or aligning the body's energies with nature. But perhaps the most bizarre of these practices was the tradition of sleeping with the gods. Yep, you heard that right. In some regions, it was believed that sleeping with an image of a god or a small statue would bring divine protection during the night. Some people would place these figures at the head of their futons, hoping for a peaceful night filled with pleasant dreams. If this sounds a little strange, you're not alone, but it was just one of the many ways that sleep in ancient Japan was closely tied to spirituality. So, imagine you're in ancient Japan, tucked into your freshly prepared futon, incense gently wafting through the air, and a small god statue nearby. You're set for a peaceful night's sleep, right? Well, not so fast. If you're still thinking, that's it, right? You're forgetting one key thing. Ancient Japan didn't just have special rituals for preparing to sleep, they also had rituals for waking up. But that, my friend, is a story for another time. Now that you've settled into your peaceful, incense-filled world of ancient Japanese sleep rituals, let's take a look at how the night unfolded once those lights went out. Imagine it. You're lying there, surrounded by the soft scent of lavender, feeling protected by your carefully placed talisman and god statue. But what happens next? Well, the night was not just about sleep. In fact, for many ancient Japanese people, the night wasn't just a time for rest. It was the perfect opportunity for socializing and storytelling. You might think that after a long day of work, people were eager to just fall asleep. But nope. Instead of drifting off immediately, ancient Japanese folks would often engage in lively conversation or share stories with their families or neighbors. This was their nightlife, and it was surprisingly similar to the way we might gather around a TV or lounge with a book today. Only here, they gathered to swap tales, play games, and, surprisingly, reminisce about the day's happenings. Picture this. You're sitting around a low wooden table, maybe with some light snacks while someone in the group begins to tell a story. And no, we're not talking about casual chit-chat. These stories were elaborate. They often featured mythical creatures, spirits, gods, and even ghosts. Yeah, ghosts. The ancient Japanese were obsessed with the supernatural, and it was believed that the night was a time when the veil between the living and the dead was thinner. So why not dive into some spooky tales before hitting the hay? Some of the stories told were from traditional kabuki plays or historical legends, but many were passed down through the generations, from one family member to the next. One of the most popular forms of storytelling was called kaiden, or ghost stories. These spine-tingling tales often revolved around yurei, those vengeful spirits I mentioned earlier. But it wasn't just about scaring each other for fun. These ghost stories also served a social purpose. They helped families bond, reminded everyone of their moral duties, and kept the fear of bad spirits in check. Now, you might be wondering, were these stories really scary? Or did they just sound spooky by today's standards? The truth is, some of these tales were terrifying. The idea of an angry ghost visiting you in the middle of the night was more than just a myth. It was something people believed in deeply. And the consequences of offending the spirits? Well, they weren't pretty. But rather than simply scaring the wits out of people, these stories acted as a form of psychological preparation for the unknown. In a way, they gave people the tools to face their fears head-on, which, ironically, might have helped them sleep better. At least, in theory. Let's not forget the slightly more lighthearted aspects of these nightly gatherings. Storytelling wasn't always about creepy ghosts or divine retribution. Sometimes, people told tales of humor, adventure, and romance. Imagine a family gathered around, sharing laughs over a particularly silly or absurd story. After all, sleep wasn't just for rest. It was about community, bonding, and emotional release. And in a way, these stories helped people let go of the tensions of the day before they finally drifted off into a peaceful slumber. But of course, these bedtime stories weren't the only thing that happened after dark. People in ancient Japan also engaged in other rituals before sleep. Some, particularly the elderly, might have taken a short walk under the stars before heading back inside. There was also a tradition of shinji, a calming prayer or chant said before bed to ensure peaceful sleep and protection from nightmares. This wasn't just about asking the gods for good dreams. It was a way of cleansing the mind and soul before entering the world of sleep. It's interesting to think about how these practices and rituals had a much larger purpose than simply falling asleep. Sleep was an integral part of life, connected to everything from health to spirituality to social dynamics. And while it may seem odd to us today, there was something deeply meaningful about this sacred, shared time of day. Imagine how it would feel to live in a world where the night was filled with such rich ritual and storytelling. It wasn't just the end of the day, it was a communal experience that tied everyone together. As you listen to these stories, the warmth of the fire flickering in the background, the laughter and gasps of awe echoing through the room, you start to understand why sleep was so important. It wasn't just about resting, it was about preparing mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for the next day. And so, with a full heart and mind, the ancient Japanese would eventually settle down for the night. With the final story told and the incense burned out, they would close their eyes, knowing they had done everything they could to ensure their spirits were at peace. So, now that the night is settled in, the stories have ended, and the incense is burned down to the last little wisp of smoke, you're probably thinking, all right, it's finally time to sleep. But wait, don't jump to conclusions just yet. Sleep in ancient Japan wasn't just about closing your eyes and dozing off. Oh no, there was a whole ritual around how to make sure that sleep wasn't just restful, but also spiritually balanced. Yep, you guessed it, drinks were involved. Now, I know what you're thinking. Drinks before bed? That's not so strange. A warm cup of milk, maybe a little herbal tea, but in ancient Japan, the drinks weren't quite what you might expect. We're not talking about chamomile or even a soothing cup of sake, though there was a bit of that too. The drinks that helped people sleep weren't just for comfort. They had spiritual significance. Take amazake, for example. This warm, sweet fermented rice drink wasn't just a tasty treat. It was believed to be the perfect sleep aid. Imagine you've had a long day, you're sitting there in your futon, getting ready for sleep, and someone hands you a warm cup of amazake. Not only is it a comforting drink, but it's also believed to bring a sense of peace and tranquility, exactly what you need before settling down for the night. The drink, which is made from fermented rice, was thought to help harmonize your energy and spirit, making it easier to slip into a restful slumber. Of course, ancient Japanese folks also believed it had health benefits too, which is why it was often consumed during the colder months. But amazake wasn't the only drink on the menu. Let's talk about matcha. Yes, that same vibrant green tea we all love today. Ancient Japanese people used it as part of their sleep rituals, though not quite in the way we do now. For them, matcha wasn't just an energizing pick-me-up, it was also a way to calm the mind and spirit. The process of preparing and drinking matcha was a contemplative ritual, one that encouraged mindfulness before rest. You could say it was like their version of unwinding before bed, though admittedly, It may not have been quite as sleep-inducing as Amazake. It's a bit wild to think about, isn't it? In today's world, we've got all sorts of sleep aids, from melatonin gummies to apps that promise to help you relax. But in ancient Japan, the simple act of drinking a fermented rice drink or sipping on matcha was believed to be enough to prepare the body and mind for restful sleep. A far cry from some of the modern methods, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Despite these calming, sleep-inducing drinks, the ancient Japanese didn't just drink and fall asleep. Nope, they had a pretty unique approach to the entire process of preparing for sleep. It wasn't about simply consuming a drink and going straight to bed. Oh no, they would often engage in calming rituals like sitting quietly and reflecting on the day. It wasn't uncommon for people to take a moment to mentally unwind before drifting off, something that would have been perfect for those of us who struggle to quiet our minds after a long day. If only we all had time to sit and sip amazake before bed, right? It's also worth noting that these drinks weren't consumed casually. They were part of a more intentional, mindful approach to rest. People would typically enjoy their drink in silence, giving them a moment of inner stillness before they turned in for the night. It's like the ancient Japanese understood that the mind needed to be at peace to achieve true relaxation. And sure, in the modern world, we may have a drink or two before bed, but it's rarely with the same level of intention. How many of us gulp down a cup of tea while scrolling through our phones? Not quite the spiritual experience of sipping amazake while thinking about the day's events. Now, I'm not saying you need to start drinking matcha or amazake before bed to get a good night's sleep, though it might be worth a try. But ancient Japan had it figured out when it came to the power of ritual. Sleep wasn't just about getting enough rest. It was about preparing your body, mind, and spirit for the night ahead. As you prepare to settle in for sleep tonight, consider how you might take a page from ancient Japan's book. Maybe it's not about drinking the right beverages, but about being more intentional with your evening routine. Could the simple act of quiet reflection, a little drink, and a peaceful moment before bed help you sleep better? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, there's something to be said for treating sleep like a ritual rather than a routine. All right, you're all cozy, you've got your drink, your mind is at peace, and you're ready to drift off into a sweet slumber. But before you doze off completely, let's talk about something that's probably not on your mind right now: the spiritual side of sleep. You see, sleep in ancient Japan wasn't just about physical rest. No. Sleep was deeply intertwined with the supernatural. That's right. Ancient Japanese people didn't just sleep. They engaged with the spiritual world while they were at it. Now, this might sound a little out there, but bear with me. Ancient Japanese culture was shaped by Shinto beliefs, a religion that centers on spirits known as kami. These kami weren't just part of the natural world. Ancient Japanese people believed they could be found everywhere, from the wind in the trees to the rock by the river, and even in the very bed where you sleep. Yep, even your futon might have a spirit hanging out with you. This belief made sleep not just about resting the body, but about ensuring that the spirits were happy, peaceful, and watching over you during your vulnerable, dream-filled hours. Before heading to bed, many people would perform a ritual to ensure that their sleep was protected. They might offer a prayer to the kami, asking for safe and peaceful sleep. This was not just a matter of "please let me get some rest tonight," but a deep, respectful acknowledgement of the spiritual world that existed alongside the physical one. It was as though you needed to check in with the gods before you could fully rest. Picture this. You're lying down in your futon, carefully arranged with your special talismans and sachets under your pillow, a calming incense burning nearby. You might say a prayer or make a small offering to the kami of the house. These rituals weren't just about preparing for a good night's sleep. They were about ensuring spiritual harmony, peace, and protection. Sleep wasn't something that just happened to you. It was a sacred process that involved aligning yourself with the universe. Now, there's a fascinating twist to this whole spiritual sleep practice. The idea of kami watching over you as you sleep isn't limited to just good spirits. According to some beliefs, the spirits of the deceased, uriai, could also make an appearance. And before you start imagining ghostly visits that will haunt your dreams, let me clarify. Uriai weren't necessarily out to get you. They were the restless spirits of the dead, often of those who had died in an unjust or tragic manner. In fact, many ancient Japanese sleep rituals were designed to keep uriai at bay, ensuring that these spirits wouldn't disturb your sleep. One popular method to ward off uriai was to place a protective charm under the pillow. People believed that a small talisman, often crafted with spiritual symbols, could prevent these wandering souls from causing nightmares or disturbing your peace. You'd sleep soundly, knowing that you had a little bit of divine protection, ensuring that the kami were watching over you, and the restless uriai stayed far away. Imagine slipping into bed, feeling at ease, knowing your night would be free from supernatural interruptions. It's almost like you're sleeping with an invisible security system in place. Very comforting, right? But let's not stop there. The ancient Japanese had some serious beliefs about dreams themselves. Dreams weren't just random brain activity. They were considered messages from the gods or the spirit world. If you had a dream about a god, it was considered a sign of divine favor or guidance. But if you dreamed about a uriai or another restless spirit, that was usually seen as a bad omen, a sign that something wasn't quite right in your spiritual life. And here's the best part. These beliefs weren't just left to chance. Ancient Japanese people would actively seek to interpret their dreams, much like modern-day dream analysts, though with a lot more supernatural flair. If you had an unsettling dream, it might lead you to perform specific rituals or visit a spiritual leader to get advice or purification. Dreams had the power to shape your decisions, your actions, and even your entire future. The interesting part? Even today, the spiritual connection between sleep and dreams in Japan remains a significant aspect of culture. While we might not say a prayer before bed or worry about uriai wandering into our dreams, the idea that sleep and the spiritual world are linked is still alive in some parts of Japan. Some people still follow old customs, placing charms or praying for peace before they go to sleep. It's as though deep down there's still a belief that sleep isn't just physical, it's a chance to connect with something greater than ourselves. So, as you lay down tonight, think about this. Your sleep is more than just a break from the world. It's a chance for you to rest spiritually, to align yourself with the peaceful forces of the universe. Whether you believe in kami or not, there's something beautifully calming about knowing that sleep is more than just a physiological need. It's a moment of peace and spiritual balance. With all that in mind, you can let go of your daily stresses, drift into your own dreams, and trust that whatever happens in that realm, it's all part of a bigger, peaceful picture. All right, now that you're fully immersed in the peaceful spiritual world of ancient Japanese sleep rituals, let's take a look at what was going on in the dream department. You might have already gathered that sleep wasn't just a time for rest. It was a moment to connect with something deeper, something spiritual. But dreams? Well, dreams were a whole different ballgame. In ancient Japan, dreams were the direct line to the supernatural, the divine, And let's face it, sometimes even a bit of the creepy stuff. Picture this. You're drifting off to sleep after following all the proper rituals. Incense burning, prayers said, charms tucked neatly under your pillow. You might be thinking, all right, this is going to be a good night. But what if your dreams weren't exactly the peaceful, calming visions you were hoping for? In ancient Japan, this was a real concern. Dreams weren't just random images created by your brain while it goes into recharge mode. Oh no. In fact, dreams were seen as powerful messages, and the ancient Japanese believed they could reveal everything from your future to the state of your soul. Let's break it down. If you dreamed of a kami, a benevolent spirit or god, it was a good sign. It meant that the gods were watching over you, guiding you through life. Maybe they were giving you a little nudge in the right direction, or perhaps it was just a blessing. Dreams about kami were considered spiritual gifts, and people would often interpret them as signs to be followed. But of course, dreams aren't always positive, and that's where things get a little darker. If you dreamed about a yurei, those restless spirits of the dead, it was considered a bad omen. A yurei dream wasn't just something to shrug off. It was believed that these dreams meant you were being haunted or that something in your life needed to be fixed. Maybe you had wronged someone, or there was unfinished business. In any case, a yurei dream was an invitation for a spiritual cleanup. People would often visit a temple or spiritual leader to get guidance, perform rituals, or simply pray for peace after such a dream. But wait, there's more. Not all spirits were evil or bad omens. In fact, some dreams were seen as prophetic, predicting something important or guiding you in your actions. For instance, if you dreamed about a specific animal, it could have a special meaning. The koi fish, for example, was often seen as a symbol of perseverance and strength. So if a koi appeared in your dreams, it might have been a sign that you needed to keep pushing through a tough situation. Dreams about animals were seen as messages of strength, resilience, and even good luck. The level of importance placed on these dreams was so high that certain dreams could even change the course of someone's life. Imagine you wake up from a vivid dream where you see a god, and the dream guides you to make an important decision. In ancient Japan, that decision would be taken very seriously. People didn't just ignore dreams. They believed they were divine messages, telling them what to do, where to go, and sometimes even who to avoid. It was like having a personal guide, but only when you were asleep. Now, let's add a little fun twist to this. For those who weren't getting kami or yurei dreams, there were dream interpreting methods to help people decode what their minds are trying to say. Some people would keep a dream journal to record their nighttime adventures. In the morning, they'd compare their dreams with guides or even visit a spiritual healer to help interpret what those wild visions meant. Some folks even used a method called kakujiku, which involves specific patterns of behavior during sleep to help dream better or to encourage particular dreams. So if you were hoping to see a kami in your dreams, you follow a certain pattern to increase your chances. Can you imagine trying to train your dreams in this way? Talk about dedication to your sleep. Now, it's time for a little twist that might make you raise an eyebrow. Scholars still argue about the degree to which the ancient Japanese truly believed that dreams could predict the future. Some say it was a widely held belief, with everyone from commoners to samurai relying on dreams for guidance. Others argue that while dreams were important, the idea that they could directly predict the future might have been a bit exaggerated, influenced more by superstition than real divine messages. Either way, dreams were never something to dismiss lightly. In modern times, dream analysis is still something that a lot of people find fascinating. But imagine living in a world where your dreams were seen as an actual channel to another realm, a realm where gods and spirits could communicate with you directly. That's the world of ancient Japan, a place where the line between sleep and the supernatural was blurry, where the moment you close your eyes, you might have been talking to a deity, a loved one, or even a restless ghost. So, as you settle in tonight, think about your own dreams. What if the next dream you have is more than just a random series of images? What if it's a message from somewhere beyond? In ancient Japan, they would have taken that very seriously, seeking to interpret it with respect and care. And hey, maybe there's something to that. After all, the power of dreams is still something that many of us are trying to understand. All right, now that we've covered the significance of dreams and the spiritual side of sleep, let's talk about something a little more grounded but still deeply important: waking up. Yes, that's right. We're not just going to leave you hanging as you drift off into the mystical unknown. In ancient Japan, the process of waking up was almost as sacred as the sleep itself. I mean, who knew waking up could be so important? You might be thinking, well, I just roll out of bed, stretch, maybe check my phone, and start the day. Simple, right? But for the ancient Japanese, the moment of awakening was a key part of maintaining balance with the universe. Their connection to nature, to the cycles of life, and to the spiritual realm shaped not just how they slept, but also how they greeted the new day. Let's set the scene. The first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, and you slowly begin to stir from your sleep. But before you do anything, before you even open your eyes fully, there's a moment of pause. In ancient Japan, waking up wasn't just about getting out of bed and starting the day. It was about honoring the morning, acknowledging the energy of the sun and the world around you. After all, the sun wasn't just a source of light, it was a spiritual entity, and it was tied to the gods themselves. The act of waking up and greeting the day was, in a way, a form of worship. In some traditions, ancient Japanese people would rise early, even before the sun was fully up, and spend a few quiet moments in meditation or prayer. This wasn't just about mental clarity or relaxation. It was about paying respect to the forces that govern the world. This early morning ritual, known as Jinju, a form of prayer, was often performed by individuals or families, offering thanks for the night's peaceful sleep and for the new day that had arrived. You could almost picture it. The soft light creeping through the paper windows, the sounds of birds beginning to stir outside, and you, quietly bowing to the day, acknowledging your place in the grander scheme of things. Now, don't think this was just some light, oh, it's a new day, let's get going type of thing. Ancient Japanese people understood the importance of harmony between the body and the natural world, and that harmony began as soon as they opened their eyes. They believed that the way you woke up set the tone for the entire day. So, they had specific practices to ensure they started on the right foot. Waking up wasn't just physical. It was spiritual preparation for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. There were also certain spiritual acts that helped the person gently ease into the day. One was stretching, slow, deliberate stretches that connected the body with the surrounding energy. It was said that the body's energy, or ki, needed to be balanced first thing in the morning to ensure the person would be healthy and strong throughout the day. In a way, it was like a warm-up for the spirit, not just the body. This careful approach to awakening also extended to the family as a whole. Families often took the time to share a quiet, peaceful breakfast together, beginning the day as a unit. There was no rush, No frantic scramble to get out the door. Instead, the morning was a peaceful ritual where everyone was present, connected, and grounded in the natural flow of life. But here's the kicker. The day didn't just begin with the sun. In fact, for many ancient Japanese people, the morning was considered a time for spiritual renewal. Think of it as a mini rebirth every day. You weren't just waking up from sleep. You were waking up to a new opportunity to align yourself with the natural world. And what a powerful way to start the day, right? It wasn't about checking your email or scrolling through social media first thing. I know, shocking. It was about connecting to something greater than yourself, allowing the sun to fill you with energy and preparing your spirit for whatever the day would bring. Now, while you might not start your day with a prayer to the sun god, or do some deep stretches as part of your morning ritual, there's a lot we can learn from this practice. Imagine what would happen if we started each day with intention, a little pause before diving into our busy schedules. Even a few moments of mindfulness can make a difference, setting the tone for a more balanced, focused day. And hey, the best part? Ancient Japanese people believed this early morning ritual wasn't just about mental clarity or spiritual connection. It was also about keeping their bodies healthy. So yes, stretching and mindfulness weren't just for good vibes. They were about maintaining physical vitality too. Who knew that waking up could be a full body workout and spiritual experience all rolled into one? So, as you wake up tomorrow morning, or whenever it is for you right now, think about how you can bring a little bit of this ancient wisdom into your day. Maybe take a deep breath, stretch a little, or simply pause for a moment of gratitude before diving into the chaos of your day. After all, if it worked for the ancient Japanese, who knows? It might just help set a more peaceful, balanced tone for your own waking hours. Now that we've covered the peaceful transition into sleep, the spiritual significance of waking up, and the sacred rituals of both, let's explore something else that might surprise you. The importance of the bed itself. Yep, the place where you sleep, the humble futon, wasn't just a mattress. In ancient Japan, the way you slept, the way your futon was arranged, and where you placed it were all deeply connected to the spiritual world and your overall well-being. It wasn't just about comfort. It was about creating a space that aligned with nature and spiritual harmony. So let's imagine this. It's time to get ready for bed, and your futon is all laid out. But here's the thing, you can't just toss it anywhere. Oh no, ancient Japanese people believe that where you place your futon could have a significant impact on your sleep, your health, and even your future. Sound a little extra, right? But stick with me. This whole futon placement thing was serious business. First off, there was the matter of direction. Just like how we might consider feng shui today, ancient Japanese people followed certain guidelines about which direction to face when sleeping. It was believed that the best direction to sleep in was with your head pointing north. Why, you ask? Well, it all comes down to spiritual energy. North was considered the most auspicious direction, believed to be the most spiritually aligned with the forces of nature and the universe. It was said that sleeping with your head facing north would ensure a peaceful rest and protection from bad spirits. Imagine how seriously they must have taken this. If you got the direction wrong, you might have found yourself battling bad dreams or feeling sluggish when you woke up. But wait, there's more. The placement of the futon wasn't just about the direction. It was also about avoiding certain dangerous areas in the room. For example, it was said that sleeping near a door was bad luck. It could invite unwanted spirits or even bring about illness. Doors, after all, were seen as pathways for both good and bad energy to flow in and out of the room. And having your futon near one meant you were directly exposed to whatever spiritual forces were floating around. The same went for sleeping directly under a window, another potential source of negative energy. In fact, some people would go as far as to make sure their futon wasn't positioned where the moonlight could shine directly on them. The moon's energy was considered too powerful and could interfere with the sleep cycle, causing restlessness or even bad health. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about modern-day comfort? Surely this is a little too far, right? And you're right. Today, we might just plop down anywhere and sleep soundly. But back then, the futon was not just a place for rest. It was a space where your soul rested, so its placement was treated with the utmost care and consideration. Every tiny detail was seen as important for both spiritual and physical well-being. And speaking of the futon, let's talk about cleanliness. Ancient Japanese people were big on keeping things tidy, especially when it came to the futon. And why not? After all, this was the space where they would spend a significant portion of their lives, and they believed that a clean futon would ensure good health and good spirits. A messy bed, they thought, could invite kegar, a spiritual impurity or bad energy that could disrupt sleep and overall harmony. So, every night, the futon would be neatly laid out, and in the morning, it would be folded up and put away. This wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about ensuring that the futon remained spiritually neutral, free from any bad energy that might have lingered overnight. And let's not forget about the materials themselves. The futon was often stuffed with cotton or down feathers, making it soft, comfortable, and warm. But that wasn't all. Futons were also believed to be connected to the earth. The softness of the futon was said to represent the softness of the earth itself, allowing the body to rest in harmony with the world. And since the futon was placed directly on the floor, it kept the sleeper connected to the earth's natural energies, creating a perfect balance between body and spirit. It's pretty wild to think about how much thought went into something as simple as where and how you slept. But in ancient Japan, sleep wasn't just about recharging your body. It was about ensuring that your entire being was aligned with nature, the spirits, and the universe. The futon, then, was much more than just a bed. It was a sacred space that helped you connect with the natural world and with the energies around you. So, next time you get ready to sleep, take a moment to think about how the ancient Japanese approached this simple act. Sure, you don't have to face north and fold your futon every morning, though it wouldn't hurt, but you can definitely appreciate the deeper connection they had with sleep. After all, they knew that a peaceful mind and body began with a peaceful, spiritually balanced bed. All right, you've got the ritual down. You've placed your futon with care, aligned it just right, said your prayers, sipped your calming tea, and drifted into sleep with the spiritual world watching over you. But now, let's talk about what happens when sleep doesn't come easily. Because, spoiler alert, the ancient Japanese didn't just lie there staring at the ceiling when they couldn't sleep. Oh no, they had solutions, some that were a little out of the ordinary. Let's say, hypothetically, you're lying there in your futon and sleep just won't come. You've prayed to the gods, offered your charms to protect you from bad spirits, and even done your deep breathing exercises, but nothing seems to be working. Well, the ancient Japanese had a few tricks up their sleeves to help with that. They didn't just accept insomnia as a part of life. They saw it as something that could be addressed, often through spiritual or natural remedies. And trust me, the solutions could be pretty interesting. One common approach was the use of herbal remedies. Remember how we talked about the importance of herbs earlier? Well, Some of these same herbs were used not just for helping you fall asleep, but for relieving the very anxiety or discomfort that might be keeping you awake. For example, one of the most popular remedies was lavender. You've probably heard of it before, but in ancient Japan, lavender wasn't just a lovely scent to freshen up a room. It was believed to have calming properties that could help you sleep soundly. People would sometimes make little sachets filled with lavender and place them under their pillows to encourage a peaceful slumber. And if that didn't work, well, they'd burn some mugwort. This aromatic herb, when burned, was thought to cleanse the mind and spirit, helping to chase away negative energy and encourage sleep. It was like a natural air purifier for the soul. If herbal remedies weren't doing the trick, the ancient Japanese would sometimes turn to physical rituals to get the sleep flowing. These weren't your typical stretch and relax exercises that we might try today. No. These were more involved, and they often included things like massaging certain points on the body to relax tense muscles or calm the mind. One technique was to gently press on the palms of the hands or the soles of the feet, pressure points that were believed to have the power to soothe the body and induce sleep. You could almost picture someone lying in their futon, calmly applying pressure to their hands, like a personal, quiet spa treatment before drifting into dreamland. But what if the physical and herbal remedies didn't work? What if your mind just couldn't settle down? Well, the ancient Japanese also had supernatural solutions. Yep, if you couldn't sleep, it wasn't entirely out of the question that you might be dealing with the supernatural. Some believe that insomnia was caused by malevolent spirits or ghosts, uriai, that were disturbing your peace. And what do you do when a ghost is making your life miserable? You fight back, of course. Ancient Japanese people believed that certain protective symbols and rituals could ward off these pesky spirits. A popular method involved hanging amulets or protective charms around the room to keep the spirits at bay. You might find these charms made of cloth or paper with spiritual symbols written on them, or even small statues of gods placed near the bed to ward off any unwanted visitors. Imagine falling asleep with a tiny kami standing guard at the foot of your bed. Pretty comforting, right? One of the most fascinating ways that the ancient Japanese dealt with insomnia was through dream rituals. Since dreams were seen as messages from the spirit world, some people would intentionally try to induce specific dreams to get guidance or to soothe their restless minds. This practice is known as dream incubation, where the individual would meditate or think about a particular issue before falling asleep, hoping to receive an answer or insight in their dreams. Think of it like setting an intention before you go to sleep, only it's more of a spiritual quest for an answer to life's big questions. Some people even visited special temples or shrines to perform these rituals, hoping the gods would send them a dream that would bring clarity to their situation. Now, let's talk about the use of music and sounds, because, believe it or not, the ancient Japanese weren't above using a little background noise to help ease them into sleep. The sound of running water was often used as a way to calm a mind. Streams, rivers, and even the sound of wind through the trees were believed to have calming, soothing effects. In fact, some people would sleep near a river or stream just to hear the gentle flow of water. If you think about it, it's not so different from how we might use white noise machines today, right? There's something about that rhythmic, soothing sound that just makes it easier to relax and let go of the day's tension. But what about sleeping positions? Did the ancient Japanese have any special rules about how you should sleep to ensure the best rest? Absolutely. The way you slept was actually an important factor in getting a good night's rest. For example, It was believed that sleeping on your back was the best position for spiritual harmony. Why? Because it allowed the body and spirit to align properly with the energy of the universe. Sleeping on your side, while it might have been more comfortable for some, was thought to create spiritual imbalance. The back position was said to promote deep, uninterrupted sleep, as it kept your energy channels open and allowed the natural flow of ki, life force, to circulate freely. It wasn't about comfort, it was about spiritual health. As strange as some of these practices might sound to us today, they were taken seriously. Ancient Japanese people had a deep respect for sleep, and they went to great lengths to ensure they could rest properly, whether that meant using herbs, physical techniques, or even calling upon the spirits. Their understanding of sleep was far beyond just resting the body. It was about maintaining balance, peace, and harmony with the universe. So, if you're lying awake tonight, staring at the ceiling, maybe think back to those ancient traditions. Maybe you don't need a cami to help you sleep, but a little herbal tea, some deep breathing, and a protective charm wouldn't hurt, right? All right, so now you've got the herbs, the stretches, the protective charms, and even a little bit of divine assistance to help you sleep. But let's take a step back and think about what sleep meant in ancient Japan beyond all the rituals and practices. After all, sleep wasn't just about resting the body. It was deeply intertwined with the spiritual and philosophical worldview of the time. And, spoiler alert, sleep in ancient Japan wasn't just seen as a time to rest, but also a time for spiritual alignment and self-reflection. You see, the ancient Japanese didn't just snooze to recharge their physical batteries like we do. Sleep was, in a sense, considered a journey where your spirit could travel, communicate with deities, and even encounter the dead. It was as if sleep was more of an invitation to the divine, an opportunity for personal growth and spiritual evolution. Sounds pretty deep, right? In the world of ancient Japan, sleep was often thought to be a time when the body was at rest, but the spirit, or kokoro, was free to wander. The belief was that, in sleep, the spirit could leave the body and travel to the realm of the gods or the ancestors. So, in a way, your dream world wasn't just a random concoction of your brain's leftover thoughts. No, it was a space where spiritual truths could be revealed. Imagine you're lying there in your futon, drifting off, knowing that your spirit could be heading off to some divine realm for the night. It kind of makes the whole sleep experience sound a little more exciting, doesn't it? In fact, the ancient Japanese believed that certain dreams could have direct implications on your life. Dreams weren't just about interpreting the symbols in your subconscious. They were a divine tool used by the gods to communicate important messages. If you dreamed about a deity, that could mean you were blessed or favored, or it could be a warning about something important that was about to happen. Dreaming about your ancestors was thought to be a way of communicating with them, perhaps receiving guidance or even their blessings for the coming days. So, sleep wasn't just the absence of wakefulness. It was a time when you could access the divine, connect with those who had passed, and receive spiritual insight. Now, let's talk about spiritual balance during sleep. In ancient Japan, everything, from the way you prepared your futon to the direction you slept in, was about aligning yourself with a natural and spiritual world. This alignment wasn't just physical. It was about balancing your ki, or life energy. When you went to sleep, it wasn't just about putting your body at rest. It was about restoring the energy you'd spent during the day. The ancient Japanese believed that sleep allowed your ki to regenerate, filling you up with the energy needed to face the challenges of the next day. You could think of it as a spiritual recharge, like plugging your phone in to ensure it has enough battery for the day ahead. But of course, it wasn't just about the key of the living. Sleep also had a spiritual healing aspect. In the world of ancient Japan, sleep was a time for the body and soul to purify themselves. This was a big part of why rituals, prayers, and offerings were important before sleep, because they were thought to cleanse the body of any impurities that had built up during the day. The belief was that when you slept, your body and spirit could be rejuvenated, not just physically, but spiritually as well. It's as though sleep wasn't just about recovering from the exhaustion of the day. It was also about rebalancing and realigning yourself with the greater forces of the universe. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Sleep wasn't just an individual experience in ancient Japan. It was a community affair. People believed that the collective energy of the family or community could affect an individual's sleep. For example, people would often sleep in the same room or near each other, and the presence of others was thought to provide protection and harmony. The act of sleeping together wasn't just about comfort. It was about creating a peaceful atmosphere that encouraged good sleep for everyone involved. Even children, as they slept with their parents, were thought to be spiritually nurtured and protected by the family's collective energy. So, sleep wasn't just a solitary activity. It was a shared spiritual experience that helped maintain the balance and harmony of the family. You might even say that good sleep was considered a reflection of good family life. If someone wasn't sleeping well, it was sometimes thought to be a sign that something was out of balance within the family unit, whether that was a spiritual issue, emotional strain, or even unresolved family conflict. It's fascinating to think about how connected sleep was to the overall well-being of both the individual and the collective. While modern-day sleep science focuses on things like REM cycles and sleep disorders, ancient Japan took a much more holistic approach. It wasn't just about sleeping enough hours. It was about ensuring that sleep was spiritually fulfilling and that it contributed to your overall harmony with the world around you. So, as you lay down tonight, think about how much more there is to sleep than just resting. It's not just a break from the day. It's a chance to connect with something greater. It's an opportunity to recharge spiritually, reflect on your journey, and realign yourself with the universe. And hey, even if you're just trying to get a good night's rest, maybe there's a little bit of ancient wisdom that can help you sleep a little more soundly. Now that we've explored the deeper spiritual layers of sleep in ancient Japan, let's shift gears and talk about nighttime rituals that extended beyond just the act of sleeping itself. Ancient Japanese culture didn't stop at preparing the body for sleep. They had a whole suite of practices aimed at ensuring that the entire night was spiritually and physically balanced. We've already discussed how sleep was a time for the spirit to journey, but there was also the belief that nighttime could be a delicate moment, one where spirits, both helpful and harmful, roamed freely. This belief led to a whole series of nighttime rituals to keep things smooth during the dark hours. You might think the ancient Japanese were overly cautious, but they had some pretty creative and sometimes strange ways of making sure that they weren't disturbed while they slept. Take, for example, the practice of nighttime prayers. As the evening fell, some families would gather for a small prayer ritual before bed, not just for peaceful sleep, but also for protection against wandering spirits. These prayers weren't elaborate or long. They were simple words offered to the gods, thanking them for a safe day and asking for protection throughout the night. It wasn't about a long ceremony. It was about connecting with the spiritual realm one last time before heading to bed. And hey, Wouldn't it be nice to say a little prayer for peaceful sleep before hitting the pillow? Sometimes simplicity is all you need. But prayers weren't the only thing keeping the spirits in check. Sacred objects, like small amulets or charms, were placed around the home to protect against malevolent spirits. These were typically hung near doors and windows, which were considered portals for both good and bad energy. Think of it like an invisible shield set up to keep you safe from the stuff you can't see. In fact, these amulets were often made with spiritual symbols and placed in spots where spirits might enter the home, ensuring that the space remained protected while everyone slept. It wasn't uncommon for someone to leave a small statue of a deity near their bed for extra protection. I mean, imagine going to bed with a little guardian god hanging out by your side, ensuring your dreams stayed peaceful and free from nightmares. Sounds like the ultimate sleep hack, right? Now let's talk about nighttime sounds, because apparently even the soundscape of the night was crucial. Ancient Japanese people didn't just sleep with silence or the occasional creak of floorboards. The natural world around them played a role in their rest. The sound of running water, such as a nearby river or stream, was believed to have a calming effect and could even help drown out any unwanted noises or spirits. This is where the sound of nature came in. Mizu, water, the rustling of trees, or even the faint chirping of crickets were considered to be part of the spiritual landscape that ensured a peaceful night. Imagine the tranquility of sleeping near a babbling brook, with the soft sounds of nature acting as a lullaby. The ancient Japanese believed that these natural sounds helped align the soul with the peaceful rhythms of the earth. Sounds pretty relaxing, doesn't it? But what about the quiet times when you were left alone with your thoughts before falling asleep? Well, this wasn't just idle time. It was another opportunity for self-reflection. In ancient Japan, before sleep, there was often a period where individuals would take a moment to reflect on their day, meditate, or even think about what they hope for the following day. This wasn't about worrying about the next day's to-do list. It was about spiritual preparation. People would think of their relationships with family, the gods, and nature, aligning themselves spiritually so they could sleep without distraction. It's kind of like how we might mentally prep for a big event, but instead, they were aligning themselves with the larger universe. That's some serious commitment to balance, don't you think? As if that wasn't enough, some ancient Japanese people would even engage in dream rituals before bed. We've talked about how dreams were seen as messages from the spirit world, but some people went further and actively tried to control the dreams they had. Dream incubation, or thinking about a particular person or problem before sleep in the hopes of receiving guidance in a dream, was one of the practices used. It wasn't just about having a pleasant dream. It was about getting divine answers or insights that could influence waking life. Imagine preparing for sleep with the hope that the gods would send you a message or a sign. That's next-level bedtime dedication right there. But these rituals weren't just about physical protection and spiritual alignment. They also served as a reminder of how deeply connected ancient Japanese people were to the rhythms of the natural and supernatural worlds. The night wasn't simply a break from the day. It was a continuation of the spiritual journey, a time to reinforce one's bond with nature, the gods, and the ancestors. It was as if sleep and the night itself were part of a greater ongoing conversation with the universe. In the stillness of the night, their practices ensured they remained in balance with everything around them, ready for whatever the morning would bring. So, when you think about your own nighttime routine, maybe it's time to take a cue from the ancient Japanese and add a little spiritual intention to your evening. Even if you don't have a nearby stream or a guardian god by your side, maybe there's something to be said for quiet moments of reflection, a little prayer or intention setting, and a peaceful environment to ensure that your night is spiritually aligned with the natural rhythms of the universe. You'd be surprised how a little bit of spiritual peace could transform your sleep. So, now we've explored all the layers of spiritual protection, rituals, and harmony that the ancient Japanese used to ensure a peaceful night's rest. But let's pause for a moment and take a step back. What happens when sleep is interrupted? We've been talking about how meticulously the ancient Japanese worked to ensure peaceful slumber. But what if something went wrong? What if sleep was disturbed and rest was no longer easy to come by? Let's face it, sometimes, no matter how much you prepare, sleep still doesn't come. Whether it's the weather, stress, or just a restless mind, sleep can still evade you. And in ancient Japan, insomnia wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was seen as a serious spiritual matter. If someone had trouble sleeping, it was often interpreted as a sign of something amiss in their life or spirit. It could indicate an imbalance, either physically, mentally, or spiritually. And trust me, there was a whole list of things the ancient Japanese would do to correct this imbalance and return to peaceful sleep. One of the first things they would do was consult the spiritual realm. Remember how dreams were seen as messages from the gods? Well, sleep disturbances could be seen as a warning sign, too. If sleep was particularly elusive, it was believed that the spirits or even the gods were trying to communicate something. The ancient Japanese would often turn to their local shamanic priest or spiritual leader to interpret the cause of their insomnia. It wasn't about just being tired, it was about spiritual guidance. A priest might perform rituals, offer prayers, or even cleanse the person spiritually to restore balance and remove any negative energies causing the restless nights. But let's not forget the medicinal remedies. You might think that ancient Japan had no real medicine for sleep, but they were surprisingly sophisticated when it came to natural remedies. Herbs like ginseng and lavender were popular for their calming effects, and people would often drink herbal teas or use aromatic oils to help soothe their minds. These remedies weren't just about helping you fall asleep, they were about realigning your ki or life energy. Since insomnia was often seen as a disruption in your energy flow, restoring it required more than just physical relaxation. It required restoring balance to your entire being. And speaking of energy, some ancient Japanese people used moxibustion, a traditional healing technique where dried mugwort is burned near certain acupuncture points to stimulate circulation and promote relaxation. If you think about it, it's a bit like using heat therapy to ease muscle tension, but in this case, it was believed to work on a spiritual level as well. The warm sensation from the burning mugwort was thought to stimulate the body's energy flow, calm the mind, and encourage sleep. Imagine lying there, heat gently radiating from your body as you drift into a deep, relaxing sleep. Not too shabby, right? But for those who were truly desperate to solve their sleep troubles, the ancient Japanese also had a few supernatural remedies up their sleeves. If spiritual imbalance was thought to be the culprit, a shrine visit was a common way to seek divine help. Some people would visit local shrines, offering prayers and small gifts to appease the gods and ask for peaceful sleep. There were even specific rituals performed by priests to restore balance to the person's spiritual energy. Sometimes, the person would sleep at the shrine overnight in hopes of receiving divine insight through their dreams. This wasn't a quick fix, it was a deep spiritual reset for both body and mind. If all else failed, There was always the ghostly route, and no, we're not talking about sleepwalking. Some people believe that restless nights were caused by disturbances from uriai, restless spirits, or ghosts who hadn't yet found peace. If this was the case, there were specific prayers and rituals used to banish these spirits from a home. It wasn't just about lighting candles and crossing your fingers. It was about performing spiritual cleansings and removing the ghosts from your space, often with the help of a priest or spiritual healer. Imagine calling in a specialist to rid your home of a bad spirit, just so you could sleep better. Sounds a little extreme, but that's how seriously the ancient Japanese took the spiritual forces that could interfere with their rest. But let's shift gears for a second. The ancient Japanese didn't always rely on rituals and spiritual guidance alone. In fact, sometimes sleep disturbances were attributed to more practical issues, such as physical discomfort. A too hard futon, too much noise outside, or even just being too hot or cold were common problems. So, in addition to spiritual practices, some people would rearrange their futon or sleep in a more comfortable position to help ease their discomfort. The futon might be softened with more cotton or down feathers, or people might use special bedding materials to keep the temperature just right. After all, no one sleeps well if they're too uncomfortable, no matter how spiritually aligned they are. But here's something fascinating. Even though the ancient Japanese were deeply in tune with the spiritual and natural world, they also had an impressive understanding of sleep hygiene long before it became a buzzword in modern wellness circles. They knew that sleeping in a clean, tidy space was essential for a peaceful night. Clutter, they believed, could disrupt not just the physical space, but also the energy of the room. So, keeping the bedroom clean and free from distractions was an important part of preparing for a good night's sleep. It wasn't just about getting the futon in order, it was about clearing the spiritual and physical clutter from the room to ensure a restful, uninterrupted night. Ultimately, the ancient Japanese approach to insomnia was a combination of spiritual practices, natural remedies, and good old-fashioned comfort. If sleep wouldn't come easily, they weren't just waiting for it to magically happen. They took matters into their own hands, whether that meant seeking spiritual guidance, using natural remedies, or creating a more peaceful sleeping environment. They understood that sleep was not just about rest. It was about spiritual and physical harmony, and they were committed to ensuring that every aspect of their sleep was aligned with the forces of nature and the universe. So, next time you find yourself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, maybe take a page out of the ancient Japanese playbook. A little spiritual intention, a peaceful environment, and maybe a warm cup of tea could be all it takes to turn your restless night into a peaceful slumber. All right. Now that you've learned all about the intricate rituals, remedies, and spiritual practices that ancient Japanese people used to ensure peaceful sleep, it's time to focus on something a little more practical, but no less important: the role of the environment. It's not just about how you sleep or the spiritual rituals before bed. It's also about where you sleep. The environment in which you rest can have a huge impact on your overall quality of sleep. And ancient Japan had some pretty specific ideas about how to set up your space to ensure the most restful night possible. Imagine, for a second, you're in an ancient Japanese home. The walls are simple, made of wood and paper, with tatami mats covering the floor. There's no fancy bed with a mattress and box spring like we have today, just a futon, which is rolled out at night and tucked away during the day. But even though the setup is minimal, there's a real thoughtfulness in how everything is arranged. The arrangement of furniture and objects in the room wasn't just about convenience, it was about spiritual alignment. Even the location of the bed and the direction it faced were considered important. You might be thinking, isn't it a bit excessive to worry about the direction your futon is facing? Well, yes, it might sound like a lot, but for ancient Japanese people, sleep was a deeply spiritual experience, and everything had to be in harmony with the world around them. The direction you slept in was believed to impact not only your sleep, but also your life energy, or ki. As I mentioned earlier, sleeping with your head facing north was the most favorable direction, as it was thought to align you with the forces of nature. But you couldn't just face any direction and expect a good night's sleep. Sleeping with your head facing south, for instance, was considered unlucky and could result in disturbed sleep or even illness. It's almost like having a lucky side of the bed, but with much higher stakes. But it wasn't just about the direction of your futon. The clutter in the room was also considered a major factor. Ancient Japanese people didn't just clean their rooms for aesthetic reasons. They believed that a messy, cluttered space would disrupt the flow of ki and invite bad energy. If your room was filled with unnecessary objects, it was thought to create imbalance and unrest, leading to disturbed sleep. So, before bed, everything was put in its place. Your futon was neatly laid out, your belongings tucked away, and the space was cleared of anything that could cause distraction or negative energy. It was like preparing a sacred space for rest, free from anything that might interfere with the flow of peaceful sleep. Can you imagine living in a home where every night you had to make sure everything was in perfect order before sleep? It definitely sounds like a lot of work, but it's also a reminder of how much care was given to the environment. Let's talk about the sounds in the environment. We've mentioned the soothing sound of running water as a sleep aid, but there were other natural sounds that were equally important. The sound of wind rustling through trees, the chirping of crickets, or the gentle hum of nature were all considered part of the environment that helped lull a person into a peaceful slumber. The ancient Japanese had a deep appreciation for the natural world, and they believed that the sounds of nature could help synchronize the body and mind with the rhythms of the earth. In fact, it was common for people to live near natural bodies of water, like rivers or streams, so they could sleep to the sound of flowing water. In today's world, we might use white noise machines or sleep apps to replicate this, but ancient Japan had the real deal. The lighting in the room was also an essential factor in creating the right environment for sleep. But unlike today, where we have the option of dimming lights with a remote or flicking a switch, ancient Japanese people used candles and oil lamps to light their homes at night. These soft, flickering lights weren't just practical, they helped set the mood for rest. After all, it wasn't just about having enough light to see. The gentle, dim light of a candle or oil lamp would help prepare the mind for relaxation and sleep, while too much harsh light could make it harder to unwind. In a way, these soft lights created an atmosphere of tranquility, inviting sleep into the room. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was the presence of calming, gentle illumination that set the right tone for the night. And let's not forget about temperature, because let's face it, we all know how hard it is to sleep when you're too hot or too cold. The ancient Japanese were no strangers to the struggle of finding the perfect sleeping temperature. While their homes didn't have air conditioning or heating systems like we do today, they were still highly aware of the importance of a comfortable sleeping environment. During the colder months, people would use hot stones or heated kotatsu tables to stay warm at night. In summer, they would sleep near open windows or use fans to keep cool. The key was balance, keeping the temperature just right to promote a restful night without disrupting the body's natural rhythms. It sounds simple, But maintaining the right temperature was key to a good night's sleep, even back then. So, as you can see, the environment in which the ancient Japanese slept was much more than just a space to rest. It was carefully curated to encourage peace, balance, and alignment with the natural and spiritual worlds. Every detail, from the direction of the futon to the sounds in the room, was thought to contribute to a harmonious sleep experience. And while it may seem a little extra by today's standards, there's something to be said for creating an environment that fosters not just physical comfort, but spiritual peace as well. Next time you get ready for bed, think about your own sleep environment. Are there changes you could make to help create a more peaceful, restful space? Maybe it's as simple as cleaning up, dimming the lights, or using a sound machine to mimic nature's calming rhythms. After all, the ancient Japanese knew that the environment plays a huge role in sleep. Maybe it's time for us to take a page from their book. Okay, now that we've talked about the environment, the rituals, the spiritual preparations, and even the quirky little remedies for sleeplessness, let's take a moment to talk about something a little more philosophical, the deeper meaning of sleep in ancient Japan. Because for them, sleep wasn't just about physically recharging your body. It was also a time to connect with the broader forces of life, nature, and the spirit world. To them, sleep was a ceremony, not just a passive state. In ancient Japan, sleep was seen as a vital part of spiritual balance. It wasn't just the act of resting your body, it was a time to align with the universe and restore your ki, or life force. Much like how we go to the gym to strengthen our muscles, sleep was viewed as a way to strengthen our connection with the universe. It was a time to recharge, not just physically, but spiritually. This connection to the greater forces was woven into everything, from the way you prepared your sleeping space, to how you approached the act of sleeping, to the way you woke up in the morning. Think about this. When you fall asleep, your body and mind temporarily let go of the physical world. Ancient Japanese people believed this was a time when your spirit could wander, without the distractions of daily life, into the realms of the gods, ancestors, and nature. The night wasn't just a random pause in your life. It was an integral part of your spiritual journey. Your dreams could provide you with messages or guidance, as we've discussed. But even if you didn't have a prophetic dream, sleep was still a way to reconnect with something greater than yourself. This sense of spiritual renewal during sleep isn't just limited to the ancient Japanese either. If you look at various cultures, many share the belief that sleep is a time for the soul to escape, wander, and be replenished. But in Japan, this connection was not only acknowledged, it was ritualized. People didn't just go to bed. They set their intentions, prepared their space, and invoked divine protection for the night ahead. In a way, the ancient Japanese used sleep as a form of spiritual self-care, long before that concept became a popular idea in modern wellness practices. But let's go deeper, because sleep wasn't just for the body or soul. It also served as a moment for self-reflection. Ancient Japanese people often used the transition to sleep as an opportunity to reflect on their day. This wasn't just about going through a mental to-do list or thinking about the day's events. It was about reflecting on their actions, intentions, and the way they interacted with the world. Sleep, in this sense, became a spiritual cleanse, a moment to clear the mind and soul of any negative energy or unresolved emotions before heading into the night. This practice was tied to the belief in karma, the idea that actions in life, whether good or bad, would influence the balance of one's spiritual energy. Before bed, people would reflect on how their actions that day contributed to their karma. and if there was any wrong they needed to correct. It wasn't a time for guilt tripping or stressing. It was a quiet, peaceful moment to acknowledge what had happened and let go of anything that might have created an imbalance in their life. In this sense, sleep became both a literal and figurative form of resetting, aligning you once again with the natural world and the cosmic flow. But what if you had a bad day? Well, in that case, sleep offered another opportunity: forgiveness. If you had acted out of line, hurt someone, or simply had a bad day, sleep gave you the chance to reflect and find peace. Ancient Japanese people viewed the act of sleeping as a way to release all that negativity and step into the next day with a fresh perspective. In essence, sleep allowed for emotional and spiritual rebirth, a way to start each new day without carrying the weight of past wrongs or mistakes. And here's the thing, this idea of sleep as a time for reflection and spiritual renewal didn't just stop at the individual level. It was also collective. Sleep was viewed as something that affected the family and community as a whole. The collective harmony of the family, their shared sleep rituals, and their shared alignment with spiritual forces all contributed to the overall well-being of the family unit. If one person was restless or troubled, it was thought that it might affect the peace of the whole family. That's why many people slept together or kept close to each other during the night, so that the collective energy of the family could help keep everyone in balance. It was a deep, shared experience that went beyond the individual and extended to the entire community. So, while sleep in modern times is often seen as just a practical necessity to restore energy for the next day, for the ancient Japanese, it was much more profound. It was a ceremonial process deeply intertwined with spiritual growth, emotional healing, and personal reflection. They understood that a peaceful night's sleep was essential not just for the body, but for the soul, and they took steps to ensure that each night was spiritually fulfilling and aligned with the greater natural order. As you prepare for sleep tonight, think about how you can create your own version of this ancient practice. Maybe you won't follow every step to the letter, but you can certainly take a moment to reflect, set an intention, and create an environment that fosters spiritual peace. It doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes, just a quiet moment of reflection before bed is all it takes to connect with something deeper. After all, sleep is more than just rest. It's an opportunity for spiritual renewal, a time to reflect, and a way to align yourself with the rhythms of the world. Okay, now that we've delved deep into the spiritual rituals, remedies, and environmental influences surrounding sleep in ancient Japan, let's take a look at one final piece of the puzzle: the sacred connection between sleep and the natural world. If you think about it, sleep in ancient Japan wasn't just a human endeavor. It was intricately tied to the natural rhythms of the earth, the heavens, and the universe itself. In a sense, the whole process of sleep was a way of aligning with the greater cosmos. Imagine for a second that you're lying in your futon, the cool night air drifting in through the open window, the rustle of leaves in the trees, and the soft croaking of frogs fill the night. There's no artificial light, only the gentle glow of the moon. The ancient Japanese believed that this connection to nature during sleep wasn't just a passive experience. It was an active spiritual alignment. The natural world, with all its sounds, rhythms, and cycles, was always seen as a reflection of the universe's balance. So, when you slept, you were essentially reconnecting with this balance, allowing your body, mind, and soul to realign with the forces of nature. The natural world wasn't just an external backdrop to sleep. It was part of the sleep experience itself. People who lived near rivers, streams, or forests were thought to benefit from the peaceful sounds of nature, which helped bring harmony and balance to their sleep. The gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze, the sound of water flowing in the river, these were all thought to soothe not just the body, but the spirit. The ancient Japanese people understood that sleep was more than just physical rest. It was a moment to reconnect with the natural forces that shaped their world. The very act of sleeping in harmony with nature wasn't just about the environment, it was also about embracing the seasonal cycles. Sleep rituals and practices were often adjusted according to the time of year, with different practices for summer, winter, spring, and fall. In the colder months, people would sleep longer, because the longer nights were thought to offer an opportunity to rest and replenish the body's energy. In summer, on the other hand, sleep was often lighter and shorter because the heat and humidity created a different kind of energy. The changing seasons weren't just background noise. They were considered to directly affect the quality of sleep and the body's need for rest. This connection to the seasons also influenced how the sleeping space was arranged. During the winter months, for example, the futon would be made with heavier bedding to provide warmth, and people might sleep closer to the hearth or fire to stay warm. In contrast, during the summer, lighter futons would be used, and windows would be left open to allow cool breezes to drift in. The balance between the body and the external environment was a central part of the sleep experience. It wasn't just about staying warm or cool. It was about aligning with the natural elements to achieve spiritual harmony while sleeping. The moon also played a key role in sleep practices, as it was believed to have a powerful influence on the body and spirit. The full moon, especially, was seen as a time when the spiritual world was at its most potent. Some people would sleep with their heads facing toward the moon, believing that its energy would align them with the cosmic forces. But too much moonlight was also thought to be disruptive. Too much energy could disturb sleep, especially if you were overly sensitive to the moon's pull. So, people would adjust their sleeping space or close the shutters if they felt the moon's energy was too strong. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about being in tune with the universe. The idea of living in harmony with nature wasn't limited to just sleep, it permeated every part of life. The ancient Japanese lived in tune with the cycles of the earth, the seasons, and the natural world, understanding that everything was interconnected. Sleep, as the ultimate act of rest and renewal, was no different. In a way, each night was a spiritual practice that allowed people to reconnect with the universe and align themselves with the rhythms of nature. Now, imagine that your sleep routine wasn't just about catching up on rest. It was a chance to restore your energy by syncing with the natural cycles. Your nightly rest was a way of recharging not just your physical body, but your spiritual self. The connection to nature, the seasons, the moon, and the elements helped ensure that when you woke up the next day, you were not only physically ready to face the world, you were spiritually prepared as well. It's easy to see why ancient Japanese people treated sleep as a sacred practice. It wasn't just about ending the day. It was a time to restore your balance with nature, to replenish your spirit, and to align with the forces that govern the world. In a world so connected to nature, sleep was the final step in the cycle, the opportunity to reconnect with the spiritual and natural forces that sustained life. Now, while we may not live as intimately with nature as they did in ancient Japan, there's still something deeply resonant about this idea of sleep as a time of spiritual renewal. So, the next time you lay down to sleep, Think about your connection to the world around you. Even if you're not facing the moon or adjusting your futon based on the season, there's still power in being present, in reconnecting with the rhythms of nature, and in treating sleep as a sacred practice. And now, here we are, the final chapter. By now, we've wandered through ancient Japanese sleep rituals, spiritual practices, herbal remedies, and even the environment that shaped this sacred time. We've seen how sleep wasn't just about physical rest, but about aligning with nature, engaging with the spiritual world, and finding balance in the universe. But let's wrap things up by reflecting on what we can take from these ancient practices today. It's easy to get lost in the busyness of modern life, technology, work, social media. These things are constantly pulling our attention, and it can feel like we never truly get a break. We've all been there, lying in bed with a mind that won't stop racing, trying to fall asleep while our thoughts are running in 100 different directions. But ancient Japan, with its focus on ritual, intention, and spiritual connection, offers us a beautiful reminder of how we can slow down and create a more peaceful, restful experience before bed. Imagine, for a moment, if we treated our sleep time with the same respect and intention as the ancient Japanese did. What if we created a space that wasn't just about comfort, but also spiritual balance? What if we used the time before sleep to reflect on our day, align our minds with the universe, and set our intentions for the future? Even something as simple as turning off our phones, dimming the lights, and spending a few minutes in quiet reflection could transform the way we experience rest. We don't need to go all out with incense, charms, or facing north. Though if you want to try it, who am I to stop you? But what we can do is recognize that sleep is an opportunity to recharge, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. Maybe it's a few minutes of deep breathing, a calming cup of tea, or setting a positive intention before lying down. Maybe it's simply being mindful of the space around us, making sure our room is clean and free from distractions, so we can create an environment conducive to restful sleep. Just as the ancient Japanese believed that sleep was a way to align with the natural world, we too can take a moment to align ourselves with the rhythms of life. In the rush of our modern lives, we often forget that we are part of something much bigger. There's a certain magic in slowing down, in taking the time to reset and reconnect with our own inner balance. Sleep, after all, is a powerful time for healing, for renewal, and for growth. By reflecting on the practices of the past, we can create a personal ritual that helps us get the rest we need while also nurturing our spiritual and emotional well-being. It's not about perfection. It's about creating a space and a mindset that allow us to truly rest, to let go of the day, and to embrace the healing power of sleep. Whether it's a few moments of mindfulness or a simple prayer for peace before bed, we all have the ability to tap into the deep wisdom of ancient practices in a way that fits our modern lives. So, as you slip under the covers tonight, take a moment to acknowledge the sacredness of sleep. Remember, it's not just about resting your body. It's about realigning your spirit, cleansing your mind, and preparing yourself for the new day ahead. Sleep is a powerful practice in itself, one that allows us to connect with the world around us, the rhythms of nature, and our own inner peace. And with that, may your rest be peaceful, your dreams full of wisdom, and your soul refreshed for the journey ahead.